The Deep Analysis Podcast, in association with the Information Coalition.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deep Analysis Podcast. It's early December, unseasonably warm here in New England, which is a wonderful thing as far as I'm concerned. And today we're going to be looking at M&A, mergers and acquisitions, what's happening at the company level in our sector this year, 2017, and what we think will happen next year in 2018. So why look at M&A? Well, this past year I've been covering this market very, very closely. And in full disclosure, I do act as a strategic advisor to a boutique M&A firm called Zamcor that focuses on deals in our sector. But I find it fascinating because although certainly the numbers do lie, the fact is if you follow the money trail, you get a real unbiased, pretty clear-cut vision of where our industry is at and where it's going. People make these decisions based on hard reality of the situation that they're facing with their customers, with their competitors, with their partners, and with new technologies coming into the market to disrupt them. So the year has been an odd one, and it's been possibly the most significant one since 2003, which was a long time, I'm sure, ago for many of you, but for me it seems like yesterday, when Documentum was acquired by EMC for $1.7 billion. I mean, that really rocked what was, what we then called the ECM sector. And, ironically, in this probably most significant year since 2003, it kick-started with the closing of Documentum again. Documentum this time being acquired by OpenText for $1.6 billion as part of really a divestiture program as EMC got absorbed into and merged with Dell. But it's not been just about Documentum and OpenText this year. By the way, OpenText has made a number of acquisitions, as they always do each year, but I think there's some things I just really wanted to drill down to that maybe some people haven't or wouldn't typically notice going on. So in addition to a couple of big deals, Documentum, Kofax being acquired by the private equity firm Thoma Bravo for sort of an equivalent sum, $1.5 billion. Barracuda, the archiving firm, also just got acquired by Thoma Bravo for 1.6. There's been some big deals. But I think what's really been interesting is sort of down a level from that. We've seen more and more private equity firms coming into this space. And that's significant. The reason it's significant is private equity firms are not venture capital firms. And just to be clear, venture capital firms essentially take high-risk bets. They invest early on. They expect a huge return on their investment. So, they'll invest a lot in across a range of small startups with the hope that 1, 2, or 3 of a dozen may really make it big. Private equity firms, very, very different. In fact, they're essentially the opposite of a venture capital firm in the sense that they make very conservative bets. They invest in a firm and they expect that firm to turn a profit. And though they do differ, most of them are looking for a relatively long-term profit. They're looking to turn somebody from maybe break-even to reasonably profitable and, basically make money from that company for years to come or sell it at a higher price. The reason that's important is we've seen an enormous amount of private equity investment in our sector in the past year. It's an indication that our world has matured. It's also an indication, though, that it's not dead. There's a lot of companies, and we'll see more coming, that have made a good name for themselves in ECM, BPM, and all sort of flavors and styles of content management that will probably become owned by private equity firms over the next year to 2 years. Why that's interesting is that they see them as a good long-term bet. They might not be terribly exciting anymore, they might not be cutting edge, But the private equity firms see the value of our industry. They see that things like accounts receivable, accounts payable, all the documentation around a supply chain, etc. These are critical business activities. And so they're investing in that. We're also seeing more of a move away, in fact, a dramatic move away, really, from the idea of ECM and BPM as a platform. And we're seeing people being bundled up and restructured into business-specific applications. We've seen quite a number of deals in healthcare, for example, where reasonably generic document management systems are now being essentially repackaged and restructured and reconfigured to become specialists in managing healthcare records or healthcare billing. There's definitely be a lot more of that, where we see our world move away from the platform and towards really business-specific applications. That doesn't mean it's the end of the platform. Far from it. In fact, here's the irony. I think it's quite likely in the next several years that we're going to see a bit of a flip back, because as we're moving towards a world of content services, distributed architectures, blockchain even, the use of AI and machine learning, robotic process automation, that need for a developer-friendly platform actually comes back to the fore. So not that it's going away, it's just the fact that today there are some traditional companies who really can't make that shift to the next generation, but they still have real solid value, and they're still able to generate good business, keep their customers happy, and people are prepared to invest in that. Looking towards 2018, as I said, really, I expect more of the same, but I think we're going to expand that footprint a little bit. I think there's a couple of areas, and let's just focus on one here, web content management, where there was a little bit of consolidation a few years ago with investments made in Episerver, Ectron, Sitecore. Truth is, there's dozens of pretty healthy, solid web content management specialists out there. They're being squished, basically. At the one end, you have low cost, yet really pretty high quality services for small and medium businesses like Wix and WordPress, etc. And at the very high end, you have Adobe just, driving along and crushing pretty much everybody in its path. I think Adobe's business is now around $6 billion. But the truth is, there's still a huge middle area there for these companies to grow within. And I think we're going to see more investment, more consolidation there. And we're probably going to see a mirroring of what's happening with, and what's happened to a large degree, with document management. Web content management players are really going to start looking more at industry verticals where they can optimize and configure very specific solutions for. They'll have a bigger play in compliance, particularly with GDPR coming along in Europe, which also, of course, impacts anybody who actually does business in Europe, not just European players. So I think WCM is going to have an interesting time. Certainly they all jumped on the digital marketing bandwagon, but if you think about what web content management tools are, they're not just about marketing. They're actually about building out web applications to do business. So I think we're going to see a lot more consolidation and movement in that space too. I think it's actually quite an exciting space. I don't think Adobe actually has won the day. They are massive and they're not going away. But at the same time, they're really pushing a large platform approach. So again, echoes of the ECM sector. And there's plenty of room there for people to come in and build out industry-specific applications, web applications, e-commerce applications, and also address the whole sort of compliance issue, because it's on the web, of course, where we actually capture and manage so much private data, so GDPR will play a role there too. The other thing we might start seeing in 2018, well, we will for sure, but it'll be early days, is AI and machine learning vendors starting to get snapped up. An AI startup in and of itself is of sort of limited value. Once it's placed into a bigger context, it suddenly sort of blooms and becomes relevant. AI is not generic. A lot of ECM, WCM, BPM vendors are looking at leveraging the AI capabilities, the deep learning capabilities even of Amazon and Google. And that's good up to a point. But again, when you get into specific job tasks, specific industries, you typically want something built very accurately for that task, that set of tasks, that set of processes. So there's lots of little startups out there who I think we're going to start seeing snapped up. That, again, will bring about something of a bit of a transformation in our sector. So on the one hand, consolidation. On that same hand, I guess, the argument that ECM is dead, content services is, the new king, has some validity. I don't necessarily disagree with it. But just like everything in IT, few things ever go away completely. And really what we're seeing here, and we're observing it through the M&A market, is something of a reinvention, something of a move towards, I'd like to call it a brighter future, more automated for sure, but more specific and more relevant for buyers. I think this is a good thing overall for buyers. Again, whichever sector you're in, whatever kind of business you're in, you've got your own unique needs and requirements, but you share those with your competitors. So I always give the example of healthcare, but real estate is another one, automobile manufacturing is another one. Whatever sector you're in, there are areas where you can have shared learning. There are areas where you can differentiate yourself. Wherever you are, there is a need to manage information, to do that ever smarter, to do that ever more efficiently. And there's an opportunity as a result for all of our people, everybody in our sector, to grow and adapt and get better with change. So that was a quick look at the M&A market for 2017 and a peek into 2018. If M&A is on your agenda, if you're looking to buy a company, if you're looking to sell yours, best way to have a conversation with me is just to email me at alan@zamcor, XAMCOR.com. And for anything else, always check out deepanalysis.net, deep-analysis.net. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. Got some really interesting topics coming up in the coming weeks and into 2018. So if I don't speak to you before then, happy holidays, happy Christmas, whatever it is you celebrate. God bless. Speak to you soon. Bye.